Making Monsters with Taylor Dahl. It's like beer and brats, a perfect combination.
You know the deal.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Making Monsters. Taylor Dahl here, and we are going to be doing our Bears versus Rams preview, but I also want to get to my Monster of the Week. We are doing it a little bit different this year, so rather than each of my every single week doing a full Making Monsters, I'm working on getting some bigger and better guests for you when it comes to the high school coaches, college coaches, dads, brothers, sisters, moms, all of that type of stuff. And so to get those, it may take a little bit more time as we pick monsters. So throughout the year, I'll pick a monster a week. We'll do a little segment on here. And then as the season goes on and I get the guests I would like that I feel like would give us the good content and kind of all the information we want to know out of these players, then we will drop the monster episodes throughout the season. And so, I've already done a Daryl Taylor one. Daryl Taylor just keeps on impressing, honestly. He's been a massive part to this defensive front so far, and it's been really fun to watch because I think it was a little bit unexpected of how much of an impact he would actually make, especially this early coming to a team, kind of just getting thrown right into the fire. But here we are. It's something that a lot of people were super concerned on the defensive line. They look like they're playing pretty well, actually. And so I'm crossing my fingers. We just saw Andrew Billings land on the injury report yesterday. And so we're hoping nothing comes out of that. He's been such an under the radar player, and he's really, really fun to watch. So anyways, that brings me to my monster of the week, which is my guy. I had to. It took 3 weeks to get to it, but we finally had what feels like Rome Odunze's breakout. 6 receptions, 112 yards, and his first NFL touchdown, in addition to Caleb Williams' first NFL passing touchdown. So it was kind of a fun moment. Rome Odunze got it, started running away from Caleb, who's going to keep the ball. It was reported, and I guess Caleb said he was going to let Rome keep the ball, which is really sweet. That just kind of shows the type of person that Caleb Williams is, and that's very selfless. Like he wants to win, and I'm sure that he'll have plenty of more touchdowns, hopefully this weekend. But it was just really fun to watch, and it's a connection we've been waiting to see. You saw glimpses of it in the preseason where you were just like, whew, like they could do this. Like some of these passes that you see between Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, you were just waiting for it to happen in real game and real time. And it did. So it was really fun to see that. I think it's still growing. I think, we still see a few overthrows. We saw Rome, the one weird interception that kind of just got handed into the other guys, the defensive back's hand. So things like that have to get completely sorted out. But it was hard for me not to go this with over 100 yards for Rome Odunze. And then just, what Caleb, I'm expecting that to just get better and better. It looks like he's getting more comfortable. It looks like he's getting more confident. Some of those little uneasy feeling that we had in that first week and a half, maybe even full 2 games, it really felt like it's kind of getting shaken out. The interceptions you don't love to see. One was completely on Caleb. One, like I said, the weird one, not so much. It didn't feel like it was really on Caleb Williams. That was just such an odd interception to happen. But those moments will happen. It's how you kind of bounce back from those, and it doesn't feel like he's ever shaken from those moments. We saw he seemed to be getting a little frustrated with Shane Waldron. You saw the clip where he was what play are we running? I'm glad he's being vocal. I'm glad he's saying this isn't working. Let's change it. It's a little weird to me still that your rookie quarterback in week 3 threw over 50 times, but I do think that the run game was not working, and hopefully that starts changing with more Roschon, more Khalil, whatever it takes, but it has not been working with DeAndre Swift. He's not been good. Every stat points to it. Some people can argue it's all the line. I don't think it is. When DeAndre Swift is in, I think it's 1.8 yards per carry. When Roschon Johnson's been in, it's been almost 4 yards a carry. So even you want more than that, but almost 4 yards a carry to under yards a carry is a massive difference in the NFL. So that's something that has to be figured out. I am not totally freaking out like some other people. I think some are very much overreacting when it comes to how bad things have been. And I know when you don't see, in the 20s scoring, you start to worry, but you've had no key for 2 games. It's an offense with a new OC, a new quarterback, a new wide receiver, 2 of which are rookies, by the way. And then your other wide receiver hasn't played in 2 games. You're still trying to get that connection with Keenan Allen. Cole Kmet hasn't used at all in game 1, and now you've seen that pick up. Shane Waldron's realized with what a weapon Cole Kmet is, and you just haven't been able to run the ball. I think, to me, honestly, if you can figure out how to start running the ball, this offense already is going to be leaps and bounds better. Just virtually by being able to not make Caleb throw so much and be forced into some of these situations because you can't run. So we will see all of that, something that is going to kind of be answered within the next few weeks once we see Keenan come back and once we see the hopefully run game pick up a little bit with Roschon Johnson. Maybe some moves with the offensive line helps. It's not good that Darnell Wright is injured right now, but it does look like he still may play. It's a back thing. You got to be careful with that. At the same time, it seems like he did play through it last week, and he was limited to on the last injury report. So we'll see how that goes. But anyways, my monster of the week this week, Rome Odunze. I am working on getting that episode together for you guys. Hopefully we get some really good content on just how Rome grew up and his time at Washington, which is, I just think, really fun to do that storyline in general, which I know a little bit about from the draft time, but to get more of that and just to go back to when Rome started football and the process through high school. He went to high school, there was a football powerhouse. So to kind of see how that developed and him being the player he is now will be really fun. But anyways, we are going to get into, like I said, the Bears versus Rams preview. I have Greg Beacham. He writes and covers the Rams for the Associated Press. He also covered USC football, so he's very familiar with Caleb Williams, and I'm sure has thoughts on Caleb too and kind of the things he's at and what he's seen so far in the NFL compared to what he saw him do on a weekend basis in college football. So that'll definitely be a good time. But I do want to get into some of the coaching stuff too, because that's a big topic here right now. Is a lot of people are frustrated with Matt Eberflus. I think that I get it, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Like, you have a defensive coach. I don't know how much a defensive coach you want to do. You are blaming on this offense that isn't really working because he's doing his side, like his side of the ball on the defense is really, really well. And the defensive line, who everybody thought was just going to be bad again, is actually looking pretty good. The secondary that him and Poles have all drafted together are all just developing massively. A guy in Javon Dexter is becoming one of the better interior defensive linemen in the league, and they drafted them and developed them together. It's a little weird, all of the hate, but I get it because people just want a guy like a Sean McVay. They want a guy that is a game changer offensively because you just feel like that impacts the game more. But that's not Eberflus. You're never going to get a guy who is going to be altering the offense in any way. That's why we've been trying to find the right offensive coordinator, and hopefully things start to settle in for Shane Waldron. And maybe if the scheme and Shane Waldron's play calling and all of those pieces and the run game get going, then maybe people like settle down a little bit because they can realize that like his side of the ball is taken care of and performing really well, actually keeping us in games right now. I get people want more. You want that Shanahan, you want that Mike McDaniel, you want that Sean McVay. But if you have a guy that's not an offensive minded guy, you're just not going to get that. And so maybe that's the argument. Like, you're just mad you have a defensive coach. And if that's it, then say that, in my opinion. But anyways, that's a side note, but it is kind of relative to this because people keep talking about how Matt Eberflus, if we lose, is the reason is going to be because he got out coached by Sean McVay. And I get that, but it will, to me, be more so Sean McVay outcoached Shane Waldron when it comes to the play calling would be the storyline at the end, in my opinion, because Eberflus isn't calling the offensive plays. So it's going to be like Shane Waldron, who's been with Sean McVay. Can he kind of keep up? Can he take what he learned from Sean, the few things that he, can take from that and use, but also be his own person? And Greg Beacham talks about that a little bit. Like I said, we'll get into that conversation. So there's a lot here. Both teams not playing the highest level of football right now. Both teams kind of figuring stuff out. But honestly, like, the Rams are kind of in a worse spot right now. They're missing their top two wide receivers. Their defense has no Aaron Donald, which has changed everything. Also, Ernest Jones gone out of there. Both of their defensive ends are rookies. And so they're kind of relying on the run game and Kyron Williams and Matthew Stafford to be saviors right now. And then Sean McVay doing McVay things, which that is the positive of having that strong offensive-minded coach who can just coach really well, is they can maybe win you some games that you're not going to get out of a defensive-minded coach who can only really handle that side of the ball. So that'll be an interesting storyline for this weekend. But I know we want to get to this and kind of preview some of these things that are going on and maybe the matchup between the Bears and Rams, but also, like I said, that coaching battle, but then also maybe the view from the Rams side of what they're facing this weekend with the Bears. Like, is there any nervousness involved in this, or are they saying, okay, like, this is a game we can win. This offense is struggling. You can create pressure. They can't really run the ball, so you can stop that. Defensively, there's some concerns, but can you take advantage of those certain situations with a guy like Sean McVay, a guy like Kyron Williams, who's been playing well? So that'll be fascinating. We'll get to that. But first, I want to get to a quick little commercial break. And so we'll go ahead and do that and give some love to Underdog Fantasy. So as I talk about this, and we were talking about kind of the pass attempts for Caleb Williams last week, and that's bringing me into this Underdog Fantasy. If you've never done it, maybe this weekend is your time, because over 1 million fans across 33 states last year got in the game by making picks on Underdog. So it's super easy. Even if you've never done it before, it's something that you can make simple. And for an example, if you want to go with Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams, like I said last week, over 50 pass attempts right now on Underdog Fantasy app or underdogfantasy.com, 32 and a half pass attempts is what they have him on. You can go higher or lower, and then boom. That's all you got to do. Pick a higher or lower for that. You can also go completions, which is at 20.5 right now, higher or lower for Caleb Williams on that in this game against the Rams. So a couple simple things like that can win you some money, which I feel like everybody loves winning some money. But making picks on Underdog is straightforward, and signing up is even faster. Just head over to Underdog's simple to use mobile app or underdogfantasy.com. Sign up with promo code CITY. That's CITY. And Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your local first cash pickup entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you deposit. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code CITY, CITY, to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your deposit offer. You must be 18 or older, 21 and older in Massachusetts and Arizona, 19 and older in Alabama and New England, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Are you concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. If you are in Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP. That's 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And if you are in New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY 467-369. So Underdog Fantasy, go pick that higher or lower. I feel like we'll see what this weekend looks like, but if it's any indication of last week, higher. Anyway, so let's go on. Let's move on to this next interview. Like I said, Greg Beacham, he writes for the Rams. He also covers USC for the Associated Press. Very familiar with the quarterback that we have here in Chicago, very familiar with the Rams. And so let's go ahead and get into that interview and just kind of see what this matchup can entail for this weekend. Alrighty, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Making Monsters. We're continuing on. The Bears only have one win, and they have two very close losses. That one that was you really felt like you should have had against the Colts, but it's time to move on, turn the page, go on to this weekend. And so now that's looking ahead to the LA Rams. The Rams, who are in a very interesting spot, and we'll get to some of that. But Greg Beacham, he covers the Rams for Associated Press, is joining me today to preview this game. So, Greg, thanks for hopping on with me.
Thanks, Taylor.
Yeah. So let's start with, I think, the most recent game. Rams beat the 49ers, and it's honestly a little hard to figure out this Rams team right now. I know there's a lot of injuries and stuff like that, but they barely lose to the Lions week 1. They get blown out by the Cardinals week 2, and then they beat the 49ers in week 3. To you, which team is the most Rams right now, if you were to say?
There's a lot of missing pieces to this Rams team that make it hard to predict, like you said. I mean, the way they came together in the second half against the Niners was very impressive. I mean, more defensively than offensively, honestly, because their defense has not played very well this year. That's to be expected when you lose a guy like Aaron Donald. You can't replace him. They didn't even really try. They're just trying to get by with rookies and second-year guys and just trying to put together a defensive line like that. They've really struggled on defense, though. They have a new coordinator. Raheem Morris has gone to Atlanta. But having said that, they really rallied in the second half of that game. They finished on a 20-3 run. They made a bunch of key plays. They won the special teams, which is also shocking for the Rams, considering the way their special teams have gone the last 2 years. They've been pretty terrible. And now they have a good kicker. They have a good punter. They have good guys on that unit. So they made improvements in all those areas. I will say that there's a little bit of luck in coming back and beating the 49ers, a team that good. They caught them when the Niners were missing a bunch of guys of their own. But the way they finished in that game was very encouraging in terms of overall possibility for the future. Even though they don't have the roster they had last year, they may have, some of that McVay magic, some of that overall winning mentality that can get you through games where you may not have your best guys and you can still perform well.
That is something we will get to, is the McVay aspect of this game. But I do want to talk about the defense a little bit. Obviously, like you said, losing someone like the player that Aaron Donald was, is you can't replace that very easily. It doesn't happen fast. But it is wild how drastically it changed. And I think that shows how important Aaron Donald was, not only up front, but how he affected and helped the back end of things. Because the Rams so far, they've allowed the 5th most passing yards, 2nd most passing touchdowns, and then they're not any better in the run. So do you think it's all Aaron Donald? Is it some of it just these new young pieces also trying to get this defensive scheme? Exactly what is going on defensively? Because this is what the Bears are going to be looking at. They haven't been able to score much this season, and they'll definitely want a game like this to hopefully take advantage of.
They've taken steps back personnel-wise in the front 7. Not only did they lose Aaron Donald, but they traded Ernest Jones, their leading tackler and top middle linebacker, right before the season, just kind of for no reason. I think discussions with his agent, and that, he was not going to get a contract extension because the Rams really don't extend guys, very rarely anyway. He was in his 4th year. Instead of letting him play out his year, they just traded him for a small draft pick upgrade, and now they're just 2 guys who would be backups and special teams guys are now playing middle linebacker for them. They upgraded on the secondary, that's gotten better. They added Tre'Davious White, who hasn't played that well yet, but it's early. They added Cam Curl, who also is finding his way in there. They added Darius Williams, who hasn't played yet because he's been injured. So, overall, it's been, losing Donald obviously changes everything you want to do. You can't block the same way. You can't count on him to get double teams in the pass rush. And they do have some young pass rushers coming up. They've got a couple that'll go after Caleb Williams pretty well on Sunday. They're still learning how to finish and stuff like that. But overall, it's just they don't have the guys to do some of the things that they want to do, and they're trying to figure out whether guys can do that. And I think it's been unsuccessful so far through this first 3 games. The Bears will be a test in terms of Caleb's escapability, because Kyler Murray chewed him up 2 weeks ago, and not that they're the same player, not even close, but it's the way Chris Shula described it today, the defensive coordinator said different players, but a similar challenge in terms of their escapability, in terms of Caleb's ability to extend plays, in terms of Caleb's ability to get away from guys, that kind of thing, which we saw, up close here in LA for 2 years. I think you can count on seeing them go after Caleb. Whether they can finish plays is a whole other thing, and that's going to be the difference in the game to me.
Yeah, by the way, we saw Ernest Jones, I think week 1 it was, and he's a monster. It was one of the things where we were unfortunate. I guess we were going to face him either way this season for us, but he's definitely, I'm sure, one of the bigger pieces that you guys are missing. When you talk about those the 2 defensive ends, the new guys, obviously Braden Fisk is one, Jared Verse is the other. I was a big Jared Verse person during the whole draft process. I honestly, if it wasn't going to be an offensive weapon like Aroma Dunze at 9, I was honestly hoping they would trade back a couple spots and take Jared Verse, because I just feel like he's one of those guys. He can rush the passer, he can set the edge, he can kind of do everything that you want that position to do. How have you seen him so far early on in this season kind of start to pick up on these defensive minded in the NFL?
He's lived up to your expectations, Taylor. He's been really good so far. He's been sharp, in terms of like learning how to get around NFL tackles, which is a huge skill set that, you don't have every week, even when you play in a good conference like the ACC. He's learning how to set the edge, as you said. That's a thing that the Rams really had a lot when they had Leonard Floyd on their edge. He did a really good job. As you guys know, he's really good at that. He's a good run defender as well as a good pass rusher. So he's learning how to be that guy, which they didn't really have last year, which is a real problem for them defensively last year. And in general, it's just learn how to be a pro and go through a 17-game season, but the early returns are very promising. The one thing he hasn't been able to do yet is finish plays. He's got 1 sack. He could have 4 or 5 more if he had been able to just make that last step where you get the quarterback down instead of threatening him and forcing him to be immobile. This may not be the best week to learn how to finish guys, because Caleb's really hard to finish, even though he's been sacked a bunch of times this year. We know what he can do, and it's really tough to get him down. So we'll see what happens. But Jared Verse is showing very promising signs of being a guy who can be a difference maker in this league.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. One of the things that may be easy for him to get to Caleb, we've seen a ton of pressures on Caleb. He has also been sacked quite a bit, but he's probably gotten himself out of another 5, 6, 7 sacks that should have happened because he does have that escapability factor. Let's look at the offense a little bit. I think the biggest storylines are obviously Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. And when you're losing two guys like that, who Puka had the season that he had last season, and everybody was expecting this to come back and have Cooper Kupp and how fantastic this offense was going to be. What are they doing now? It seems like they're trying to find a way to figure Tutu Atwell in some things, but it just doesn't really feel like it's working right away. What do you think the plan is going forward to get that offense going until you get those two guys back?
They won last week, and Matthew Stafford only completed 16 passes, which is kind of shocking. And nobody had more than 4. Tutu had 4 catches, and that was it. Yeah. So I don't think they have a really good answer for what to do without those two guys. Not many teams would if you lose your top 2 receivers. That's just the way the NFL is. But having said that, Tutu Atwell is a guy who, whenever he's been given an opportunity to perform by this team, he has done pretty well. He's undersized, but he's extremely fast. For whatever reason, Sean McVay doesn't like using him a lot, and he's only really used him a lot in situations where they didn't really have another choice when guys were injured. He got a lot of chances last season in 2022 when guys were injured. He always manages to come through, and he's not just a deep threat. He's also a guy who can be a decent possession receiver. He can run an out route. He can move the chains, that kind of thing. It's just a matter of getting him that opportunity to get on the field. For whatever reason, Sean has been reluctant to do that over the years, and he's also admitted that he has messed up on that. He's like, every time Tutu has a big game, he's like, "Oh, that's on me. I should play him more." And then Tutu barely plays for 3 weeks until somebody gets injured. So, it's seems like a great opportunity to do it. And Matthew Stafford's going to try to get the ball to the guys who are open, and Tutu gets open a lot. So, they'll work Demarcus Robinson in there. We'll work Tyler Johnson in there. They'll try what they can. They just don't have a lot of options in terms of like game-breaking NFL receivers. Tutu can be that guy if he gets the opportunity and things line up right. But, they're very limited by having their top 2 guys out, and there's only so much they can do.
Now, what about the run game? Because Kyren Williams obviously front flip into the end zone. We've seen him in the pass game. He's been pass catching. He's been running a lot of versatility when it comes to how they've been using him in LA so far. So do you see that being a big factor in what they will do this weekend also?
Yeah, I would have him on top of the list of things that the Bears defense needs to stop. I mean, it's very difficult, but they have a decent, offensive line blocking. They have big injuries on the offensive line, but they're starting to get some cohesiveness there, some continuity, even though, their starting guard and their starting center are both struggling with injuries. Kyren is a relentless runner. He's a hard worker. He'll hit the hole. He's elusive. He's good in the pass game when Sean remembers to use him. He can do everything, and he just doesn't give up. He's just a real tenacious running back, the kind of guy you really like to see on your team. You like to have on your team. So containing the running game would be a really good idea for the Bears in terms of forcing Matthew Stafford to beat you with the pass. That's counterintuitive sometimes, but when the 2 receivers are out and Kyren is healthy, that seems very logical to me to stack the box, try to stop Kyren, spy him out of the backfield or whatever you got to do, and then force Matthew Stafford to get the ball downfield to Tutu Atwell. He might be able to do it. He might not. It's hard to say, but that seems like the percentages to play to me.
Yeah. And that's what, when you're talking about the Rams and how they're preparing for this weekend, because the Bears offense really still trying to find themselves. Offensive line struggling, no run game right now. Looks like they're trying to shift that up and find it. Your rookie quarterback threw 52 times last week. I feel like that's a little crazy to me, but defensively, it's the strong point. It usually is in Chicago. It's just what it is. But they've been able to get to the quarterback. They've been able to stop the run. The secondary is one of the better secondaries in the league right now. What do you think the Rams would have to game plan on more? Do you think they'll be able to try and take advantage of that run game, or do you think they'll try to test that secondary a little bit with some of these more unknown weapons?
I think they've got to try to establish the run game. That's always Sean's preference, is to establish that run and then set up the pass play. That's it's a football, it's historic football, but that's the way he likes to do it. And I think they have the guys and the plans and the schemes to move the ball. They showed that against San Francisco. They managed to run the ball enough, and when you fall behind, then you end up throwing the ball more and all that stuff. But they have shown the ability to run the ball. They have a left tackle who can block pretty well in the run game, Alric Jackson. The guys they're playing up front are not the 5 that they want, but they can do it. They're also down a tight end. They're down Tyler Higbee, but they have 2 tight ends who are healthy, and both are decent blockers. And they ran a lot of 2 tight end stuff last week, more than we expected, just because those guys have not played a lot for the Los Angeles Rams. And he ran them both out there. They were blocking, they were fighting, they were doing really well. So for me, I would try to run the ball and then figure out what happens from there. And I think that's what they'll do. If you fall behind, everything changes. If you get ahead, things change. But for me, that would be the number one thing that I would start with and go with. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're looking at the Bears offense, I think that, like I said, there's a lot of things that are still being worked out. Keenan Allen hasn't played in a couple games. Looks like he may be back this weekend. A lot of people are hoping that opens up even more. But you kind of saw Rome Odunze's breakout game last week. Cole Kmet finally being used properly, things like that. And it looks like Caleb's getting more comfortable. And you said you're familiar with Caleb and kind of what he can do on the football field. What is the concern when it comes to the offense for the Bears? Is it more so just try and get to Caleb and make him rush some things and get the sacks in, force maybe a turnover? Is it more so completely shutting down that run so it forces him to make those plays?
I saw Caleb Williams make so many plays off schedule, on the run, improvising, extending plays over the last 2 years at USC. I also cover all the USC home games, and I can't imagine wanting to play Caleb Williams and not wanting to either keep him in the pocket or, give him situations where he has to make tough decisions downfield. So many of the way that he excels is just showing his athleticism and his football instincts, which are incredible. He's such a smart player. He's such a creative player in this game. To me, I would go after him. I would also try really hard not to let him escape containment. There are things you can do. You can't stop everybody from escaping containment. Kyler Murray did similar stuff to the Rams 2 weeks ago. But for me, force him to make a decision downfield. If you have Keenan Allen, that's going to make your job a lot easier. If you're Caleb Williams, also watched him for a bunch of years, and I can't remember. I can count on one hand all the dudes I've covered who get open as much as Keenan Allen. He's just such a technician. He's such a great fundamental receiver. So if they can get Keenan in the lineup, if Caleb has a chance to throw, that's going to be tough for the Rams, particularly considering they're down a starting cornerback and they're trying to patch things together on that defense.
I don't know how much you've watched, and I'm sure at this point you're starting to kind of see some of the things. The run game, though, which is weird because it's something that has been the focal point of the Bears for the last however many years, it has been struggling with DeAndre Swift. It looks like they may be shifting this week to more using Roschon Johnson. He came in last week and had a pretty good game when he was asked to be. Do you think that sometimes doing that type of switch when something's just not working, even though he maybe have proven himself last year, that switch helps a run game get going?
I love a switch, especially at running back. It's a position that's more fungible than some other positions. You can use different guys, get different things out of them, but the fundamental thing is, can he hit the hole? Can he adjust? Can he make that second level, miss that kind of thing? So yeah, I'm cool with that. And this is a good week for the Bears to try to get their run game right because, for all the Rams, competitiveness last week, they've given up a lot of rushing yards. They're not, super strong up front compared to last year. They got a bunch of young guys trying to find their way. They got a couple middle linebackers who should probably be playing special teams on a different team, just because like we talked about with Ernest Jones. So absolutely, I would try to run the ball a lot. I mean, it would be in the Rams' interest to keep Caleb Williams in the pocket trying to throw and hit targets. It would be in the Bears' interest to just run it down the Rams' throat.
Yeah, which we thought last week playing the Colts, who had allowed 500 rushing yards, that we'd be able to make it happen, and it didn't. A couple more for you, Greg, before I let you go, because I think one of the biggest storylines for Bears fans, Bears media, is how we just want somebody like Sean McVay and how he's able to game plan and how he can play call and some of his adjustments during the game that work so well. And unfortunately, there's great things about Matt Eberflus. He's really good defensively. He's just not an offensive-minded guy, so it kind of hurts the Bears at times. How beneficial is it to have somebody who is able to, just when you're missing all of your offensive pieces, be able to game plan so well that you feel like him and the quarterback can make any win happen, even when things aren't going their way perfectly?
Who was the Bears coach in 2017? 8 years ago.
How many have we had now? So that would have been, because we had obviously Nagy before he came in.
Right.
17. Was it? I lose all track now.
I'm looking. I'm going somewhere with this.
Yeah.
Let's see. It was John
Yeah.
Fox. It was last year of Fox. Okay. So it was 2017 was a really good year to be hiring a head coach if you were in the NFL, because that's, Shanahan, McDermott, and McVay all went off the board at the same time, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
yeah, it's their X factor. It's the bedrock of everything they do. The fact that Sean McVay has consistently figured out ways to win in the NFL. He has one losing season in 7 years, which is astonishing considering, the turnover this team has had, the contracts they've given out, the people who have left, the people they've had to cut, the turnover on his staff, which gets cannibalized every year by the rest of the NFL. It's remarkable the way he's managed to be a consistent winner like this. And that's why you don't count these guys out. That's why last year when they were 3-6, and people were starting to count them out and saying, they're building back. It's progress from 2022. No, when you got Sean McVay in the building, you get a shot. And that he won 6 of his last 7 games and somehow made the playoffs with that team last year. It's incredible. So yeah, I mean, the Bears fans should want somebody like that. I don't know who that is, but he's the X factor on this Rams, and he's the thing that drives everything else. And as long as the Rams keep him happy, keep him focused on football, keep him out of the broadcast booth, they're always going to be a contender, and they're going to have opportunities that other teams don't have.
Yeah, we have a lot of very jealous people, Greg, when it comes to that. When we talk about the coaching connections, kind of, Shane Waldron, now obviously the offensive coordinator here in Chicago, people very critical for the first 3 weeks. I know you guys are familiar with him. He was obviously with the Rams when McVay showed up in 2017. They both came at the same time. And so there's a lot of turnover player-wise, but just kind of the familiarity and how he learned from Sean McVay. What were your thoughts of Shane Waldron when he was there, kind of the way, and what his time when he was leaving?
He seemed like he knew what he was doing. He seemed very close to Sean, and he seemed, he would speak with us every week when he was offensive coordinator. And he clearly has a deep, broad knowledge of football. Whether that translates into being a successful offensive coordinator who calls the plays is always hard to tell. You just don't know until a guy gets in that position. And I can understand Bears fans' frustration with that. I mean, it's one thing to study at Sean's feet, but it's another thing to do your own thing. That's why LaFleur left after 1 year. He was like, I need to go call plays on my own. And he went to Tennessee, proved that he could run an offense that was his and entirely his. Yeah. And now, he's been a Packers coach ever since. It's just a thing where you don't know what you're going to get until they get in that situation, have to figure it out for themselves. And the results speak for themselves. There are probably a lot of other factors in terms of Shane's overall success, Seattle, all that kind of stuff. But there are definitely some similarities. There are some things that go on with Sean that translate into every other coach. But then guys have to be their own guy too, and that doesn't always work. And not everybody has the same tools as the Rams. You have to adjust. There's so many variables in terms of what makes a successful play caller, what makes a successful offensive coach. He seems like he knows what he's doing. He's a fundamentally sound guy, but results are results. At some point, you got to get them.
Yeah. And it was funny. We always talk about the Shanahan tree and how many branches that has at this point. And I work here in Jacksonville too. I cover the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I also cover the Bears. It's been a long few years, but
it's a hell of a commute.
Yeah. But when we're talking about coaching, because obviously here in Jacksonville, the 3 teams right now that don't have a win are the Tennessee Titans, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Bengals. So Zach Taylor and Press Taylor, who are brothers, and then Brian Callahan, who was with Zach Taylor with the Rams, and then Shane Waldron, who was with Zach Taylor at the Rams. It's the wrong tree to be a part of.
Get out of the tree.
But anyways, Greg, a few final thoughts. So if you were to predict how this game was going to go this week, do you picture another kind of how the Bears games have gone all week and how this maybe last game has gone for you, that close, low 20s type of game, or are you expecting something different?
I think a close game. I think both of these offenses have not separated themselves enough to where you can count on them to generate a lot of points by themselves. And defenses both have problems, but that's and early in the season, I generally think the defense is going to get it together if you give them a week to prepare, that kind of thing. So I see a low-scoring game. Could be wrong, but I think it's going to come down to the fourth quarter, and whoever makes the adjustments, makes the big plays, makes the special teams plays, perhaps like happened last week with the 49ers and the Rams. It can come down to something like that's not necessarily something you can plan for in the long run. So I'd be shocked if it wasn't a close game, and probably a fairly low-scoring game. But it's early in the season. We don't know enough about these teams to know 100%. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, that's why when you go through the scores of the teams so far, like some teams, they'll get blown out by 30 points one week and then they'll win by 7 the next week. It's very unpredictable right now with offenses. And like you said, defenses are kind of getting in their stride. But thank you, Greg, for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I guess I don't want to say good luck this weekend because I think we need the one too. But, have a good time watching the game.
I'll have a good weekend either way, no matter what happens to the Rams. So.
There you go. There it works. All right, have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Taylor.